So, I'm doing another stream, pretty much just because people seem to like these things. So, yeah. And I have with me my buddy Jeff again.
Hello.
And on the screen, you're seeing his study right now. He's doing a study. So, we figured maybe we would keep things open and take your questions and also talk a little bit about studying and stuff like that. Yeah. So we're gonna start with that, and then as questions come in, we'll take those.
Hopefully,
But why don't you talk about what you're doing, Jeff?
I'm studying metal and suitcases of armor.
Why?
I'm trying to because I am doing a piece that requires a lot of study on metal,
Hmm.
black and white.
Hmm.
Because I don't know how to do color yet, but it's all in values.
That's all right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think when I started on this piece, I did I measured out the angles to try to see abstract shapes instead of the full suitcase of armor, and it's a really useful technique that you actually taught me, where you try, instead of seeing the helmet for what it actually is, you take a look at the abstract shape around it. So, for example, there's this shape right here. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse?
I can see your mouse.
Oh, okay, I will.
I can, so don't worry about it.
Okay, I'll just make this clear for everybody else then.
Okay.
So yeah,
I'm pretty sure they can see your mouse too.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I'm gonna be lazy.
If you want the red to show up though, you'll have to go above your color layer.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like, instead of seeing the actual suitcase of armor, you take a look at
Suit.
this. Yeah, or the helmet.
I just think it's funny how you call it a suitcase. Anyway.
Suitcase.
Yeah. Anyway. It's okay.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Everyone gets nervous.
Yeah. But yeah, you take a look at this abstract negative space, and then that's how you just like draw that, and then you do everything else in a abstract shape, and then it just keeps on building up. And then what that does is it actually helps make things more accurate, because when you just try to see the helmet and you see it as a helmet, as a symbol, you're getting your mind all mixed up, and then you're getting distracted by what it is. So if I were to actually try to draw it, it would be very difficult, because I'd be constantly erasing, trying to get it right, drawing, flipping the image to check, and it'd just be a back and forth thing.
Because your eyes are super good at picking out
it's
differences, and you'll see like a little bump, and then your eyes tell you, oh, there's a bump here, so you draw like a big bump, even though it's like a tiny change.
Yeah, and you get distracted by that, and then what happens is you actually forget the actual placement. You'll take a guess, but that guess is wrong. So what this does is that it actually, like when I first did it, I became very surprised at how accurate like it was still off, but I was closer than I would be if I were to try and draw it. Because, for example, sometimes I start drawing off, like if I tried to copy it, I just sort of like, oh, I'd be drawing this thing, then I have a circle that represents that. But what I do is I start drawing it, and then all of a sudden, oh, this thing's too small, it's off. The distance from here to here is completely different. Like, look at that, and look at this.
Yeah.
And it's like, what that is that you're getting caught up in symbols. And then you don't have to do that. You just look at abstract things, try to find the shapes. And when I first did it, I wasn't able to. But what you told me to do at the time, I think, was image rotate 180. I turned it upside down, and then automatically that made me start looking at it in abstract shapes. Looking at this, it's like it's harder. Your mind has a harder time to identify this as a helmet. It's just this thing. And then when you see that, it's like, oh, okay, I have this thing here. I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. And this part here doesn't become a part of the helmet. It's just this shape. It's like this.
Yeah, and then it's much easier to copy those abstract
Yeah,
shapes. Yeah.
yeah. And once when you do an exercise like this where you try to get it perfect and use this technique, it really helped in making things accurate. So then once when let me rotate it back 180. Once when I moved on to this piece right here, I still had to do correcting because I'm still not that good at it yet, but it was faster and it didn't take as much time. And then once when you start focusing on relationships, which is like, let's say this piece right here and the distance to that, things start getting more accurate. And then what that does is once when one thing is perfect, you start measuring what's around it. So like this thing here is perfect and it has this amount of space from that to that, and then you measure that and it's like, oh, gotta turn this off. And then it's like, oh, okay, that's relatively okay. But then like you take a look at this, and then it's just like it just builds up eventually.
Right.
And it's like, oh, okay, mine's a bit too long. This one's a bit closer, and then it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
so once when
angles
something's correct and things start settling in, it becomes easier. Yeah. So that really helped, and then I started focusing on, the metal itself, where the light's coming from. This piece right here, light's coming this way, and light's coming from different areas, because when you're in the open, light is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then it causes all sorts of different reflections.
So,
go ahead.
So how does this help you then with the thing you're doing in your own piece?
You mean like the goblins?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The thing that I found before was that when I started doing this piece, I had a long period of time where I didn't work on it anymore. So when I first started this, I already did a study of metal, and then it wasn't that hard, and it was like, okay, I got this. I got the idea of metal, so I was able to take a look at a reference, and then even though the lighting is different and the position is different, I was able to take the idea of the way the light was working on the metal and transfer it over to my own work. But then after a while of not doing this piece, coming back to it, I tried to do the same thing. And I will show you what it looked like before. And it looked something like this. This is what it looked like before, once when I finally came back to it and redid some work on this guy. It ended up not looking like metal. Things looked like clay.
Right.
And it just didn't look very good. And then I kept thinking at the time, metal as high contrast. Like here, for example, you have this very light value and then swiftly changes to this darker value, and there's barely any transition at all except for this little piece right here.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that in my mind, but the more I tried to work on this and just take a look at a reference of a metal, it wasn't getting to me. And what I found out was that
what do you mean it wasn't getting to you?
In my mind, I understood that there's high contrast.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I looked at this, and it's like, okay, there's dark value here, light value here, super light value here, and it's like, this is super high contrast.
Mm-hmm.
But then I tried to paint that in here, and this is what I got.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't understand what's going on.
Right.
And what I realized was you have to do studies, and of course, when you're doing studies, you got to be conscious of it. You got to try to understand how the metal is working, how the material is working, how the light is bouncing off, and how the form is turning, and how the light follows that. But eventually, your mind is going to stop consciously thinking of it. You're just going to start copying, and that's inevitable. But the good thing about that is you get a feel for the material. You start feeling it out. It's like this metal. It's churning. Well, let me get this thing back here. It's churning this way.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel that when you
Yeah.
draw it.
Yeah.
And in a more direct way, it's this is really good, and I recommend it for people. If, let's say, you're working on a jacket, a leather jacket, and you have a leather jacket, put it on, feel it, feel the texture on your fingers, because then you'll start, your body and your subconscious will start taking that in. The next time you draw or you paint, you feel, you might actually be able to remember the leather. And it's like, oh, it feels this way, and the wrinkles bunch up this way because the material, it's thick, it's skin, stuff like that. And you can't do that all the time, in real life, because not everybody has. But it's like still, and then when you're doing a study of this, of even a picture of this armor, you start eventually getting a feel for it. You start taking a look at the bumps here, and then it's like, okay, that form is turning this way. There's this bump over here. This form is turning that way. This is going like this. This is going like this. And then subconsciously, you take that in.
Right.
So when I did this piece, it's like, okay, I got a feel for it. And then when I revisited this, it started getting easier again. It went like here to this and this and this. And it's like, okay, I'm actually progressing again. And yeah.
Yeah. I remember talking about the feeling thing. Jeff and I were in animation school together, so I was having trouble with drawing trees, and I guess I would draw them like that or whatever. And then you mentioned to feel it, feel the bark, and so just by thinking of that, like running my hand across bark, I noticed my movements changed. So it became more tree-like. And then I started to naturally change how I draw instead of... And it was easy, and it's like, oh, okay, I can kind of draw tree texture. And it wasn't because of studying something. It's just remembering how that feels and understanding that, of course, for this kind of tree anyway, it's gonna be bumpy. It's gonna have that quality, and then feeling that. And I don't know, I was hesitant at first because I didn't like that idea too much. I'm very much about understanding concepts. I want to figure out things in sort of a scientific way. And when you're like, oh, just feel it out, it's like, but what does that mean? What angles do I do? What perspective? I don't know. What's the anatomy? I need to understand that instead of just going with my feeling and understanding that, no, it's a tree. You know what a tree looks like. You know what a tree feels like. So, yeah.
And it's this, people, I think Feng Zhu said this a lot about building your visual library. And it's true that, like, when you take a look at images and stuff like that, you do build an image in your mind. But that's if let's say, for example, you take a picture of water and then you try to paint that, it's like, okay, that's you're gonna absorb that eventually. But if you just go out, put your foot in water, you're gonna feel it. It's like and that's another thing. As an artist, when you take in experience, that's gonna add things to your mind, consciously or subconsciously.
Right. Yeah.
Which is why I say it's a really good idea to, if you have a texture or a material, something you need to paint, if you have it, feel it, wear it, see how it works, and just touching it, it will affect your mind, it will affect your subconscious, and you will absorb it.
Yeah.
And it's all about that, really. In having the internet and being able to look at pictures and everything and stuff like that, it's really useful. But what I find is that when I just find all these awesome images of, let's say, a mountain or a forest or something, I put it in a folder, and then I don't look at it again very much. You see it, but you don't absorb it all that well, and that's not really building up a visual library. If I had to really absorb it, I would have to consciously look at that, try to memorize it, maybe even do a study of it. But that doesn't. It's like, it's okay, but if you can, let's say, just go out and just feel the forest around you, then you're gonna absorb that feeling. You're gonna remember the twigs under your feet, or the leaves falling. If it's like in autumn or something like that, the bark of a tree. That stuff builds up in your subconscious, and that's a really good way to build a visual library if you have the time for it. If you don't, then do what you can.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to talk about traveling then.
Mm.
So here's a thing that was something that I would notice, and it would be about Chinese artists. So here's this artist, Zhong Fenghua. I'll write it in the chat. Or Zhong Fenghua? I don't know. That guy. And whenever I would look at Chinese art, I would always be amazed by the detail. Like, there's so much detail all the time. And I didn't understand, how do they come up with these ideas? And so this is more of his work. And again, it's just super detailed. Like, you can see in every little thing there's intricate details. And having the imagination to come up with this stuff, it seemed crazy to me, because I'm from North America, specifically Vancouver in Canada, and it was like, why is it people from China seem to all have this level of detail? And I felt pretty insecure and a little bit inferior as well, because I thought they must have something I don't have. They must be, I don't know, they have something, and I couldn't figure out what it was. Then this past year, I went to Taiwan, and I was exposed to the culture, and like, here's just a picture. There's like a bunch more, but what I noticed is there is detail everywhere. Like, if you look at these things on the roofs, like, look at, each thing has a different set of tile, and they have random things in random places. See, this has plants, and you just look around and it's detail upon detail upon detail. And I'm sure I could find like even more, but anyway, the point is there was detail everywhere and stories everywhere. So I started to feel like, oh, this is why the Chinese artists draw detail all the time, and they're able to come up with these ideas, because this is their world. This is where they live. They live in a place where, like, you would just be walking and then you see like a makeshift air conditioner unit that's kind of half broken, and there's just things sticking together, and it's amazing. And everything looked like concept art. So yeah, like, here's another picture, and it's just like, what? Like, atmospheric. This is something I didn't know before. I would watch like Feng Zhu paint, and that artists always put in atmospheric perspective, but in Vancouver you never really get this much atmosphere. But then, yeah, in Asia it's like, oh, atmospheric perspective is real. Because of all the dirt and the pollution and the humidity, right?
Yeah. And in Vancouver, the air is very clean, but it's just, everything is small. It feels small.
Right.
Whereas, like, when I take a look at the pictures in Asia, it's like that small amount of area can feel like it goes on forever.
Right.
And it's like, the place that you went is like, it's just like this tiny area, right?
Yeah. Taiwan's a small country, but it feels huge. And that's when I finally understood the importance of a visual library. I actually didn't care too much about traveling before. It's like, yeah, I would watch travel shows and things, and I would see different parts of the world, and it's like, oh, I've already seen it. But when you actually go there and you experience it, it's like, oh. And then what I realized is, if you pay attention, even in your small world, if you live in a small, boring place, if you pay attention, you can start to see little details everywhere. And that's going to strengthen your brain. Like, even if you look at this armor, and you notice all the screws, Oh, there's screws here, and then it's like, okay, armor has lots of screws, and oh, the armor has to attach to the body, so you see like a belt buckle. It's like, oh,
Right.
okay. And then even on the belt buckle, you see the leather has screws on it and also has a thickness to it.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of stuff where you're paying attention to all the little details that suddenly your brain feels like, oh, I'm expanding. I'm
Right.
not just... Because otherwise you draw armor and you're just copying it and you're not processing it, and you might get stuck with, well, what does it look like? And then maybe you even fall into the trap, or not a trap, but the feeling that I can only draw things good from reference. And when I don't have reference, I don't know what to do. And a way that might work is to, the more you do analysis, instead of just copying it, to actually think, like, what's going on here? Let me understand the functions of this, not just the form. So there's a screw, and you understand, like, well, why is there a screw here? Well, this is to keep the visor on the head, so that this can move up and down. Oh, okay, that's why it's there. So then every time you're going to draw something like that with a hinge, you have to understand, okay, there's going to be something connecting this hinge. So it becomes building, rather than just looking at stuff and not knowing why designs work.
Right. You'd be surprised at how much, like, you'd be surprised at how much your subconscious affects you in how you interpret a line and how you interpret reality. And for me, for a while, I noticed that, like, I'd always draw rocks, like, I'd feel out the rocks. You know, they had, like, this jagged feeling. I don't know if that looks like a rock or not, but, you know.
Yeah.
Like, they have this jagged feeling. And that's all because of just subconscious. You know, you've taken things into your mind. And if you take a look at Vancouver, it's like everything's clean, everything's a very small feeling. But what you'll notice is that, for me at least, I feel very much like an individual. And that affects my art. And I know for you, when you went to Taiwan, you had this feeling of feeling insignificant. But because of that, you took a look at the Chinese artist again. You notice that, like, there's never just like one thing going on. There's never one character. It's like there's a multitude of characters going on. There's lots of detail within the characters. And then you start realizing not only is your environment affecting you, but the environment affects the culture, and the culture is around you. That's affecting your subconscious, and that affects your art.
It's awesome. It's awesome to think about stuff like that. Like, wow, it's not just about, you know, like little things. Like, they did this experiment, or not, it wasn't an experiment. No, yeah, it was an experiment. Anyway, and it was with a school of fish, and there was like a bunch of fish, and then there was like one different fish. And they had people from the West look at that, and they would, and by West I mean North America, Europe, and they would pick out that one different fish, and then the Asian people, when they saw it, they would pick out the group of fish in general. Of course, we're generalizing, but they would be more. They would tend to pick out the group of fish because they're seeing the group as one thing, and the Western people just see the individual. So yeah, that was really interesting.
It's the fact that, like, with Westerners, we're very much into the idea of individualism, and like in Vancouver, I feel like very much like an individual. And then you see the art, and it's like there might be stuff going on, but you quickly focus on one thing, one object, one character. But in Eastern culture, it's that there's always the especially with China, there's always the idea of the group, the whole of the country that's going on. You can take a look at the art, and once again, it's never just one thing. There's a union of things going on, and everything's affecting each other.
Yeah,
and it's really interesting when you start thinking about that, because people say that art reflects the culture.
right.
And then you think, well, how does that really affect it? And then you realize, the art comes from an artist, and an artist is a person, and that person is affected by the things around them. An artist chooses something from reality, and he takes that and he interprets it in his own way.
Right.
And that doesn't affect just art as in like, a way to convey emotion, but it involves things in a very technical way as well. You take a look at any of Feng Zhu's videos, and then you hear the way he does his concept art about, okay, if there's a branch here, then that means this world is very nature-like. And that means if this is a forest, well, it's going to have these kind of branches, it's going to have these kinds of animals, it's going to have these kinds of rocks and geography. And then you can see how that his environment affects him, and how he builds on top of that, and everything just becomes world building, and that's concept art. And you see the way he operates, and it's like, oh, it all makes sense now. It's not just that he's this amazing god that come out of nowhere. He's still awesome, but it's like, there's
thought behind it. Yeah, I'm just looking through all the images, and even when there is one character, there's always some other stuff. You always get groups, much more than in North American art. There's less group feeling. But here there's always like groups. It's all about groups. And of course this is just one art. See, even in this, it's like a bunch of guys. There's always groups. So anyway, you want to go to questions now?
Sure.
Or do you still want to talk more about the study thing?
I guess the only thing I have left to say is and this is probably just repeating the thing, but when people tell you like go experience things and stuff like that, and do things, and as an artist and stuff like that, it's important not to think of that as just an excuse to not do anything. It's like when you go experience another culture, it's like you really start noticing the different world it is in,
right,
and the different type of thinking, and it's all relative. Everything affects everything else, and it affects the psychology of how a person thinks and how they do their art. But yeah, we can move on to questions now.
All right. Let's start at the bottom, and then I'll go up. Do you want to do the taking question thing? That might be faster as well.
Sure. I just got to know how to stop screen sharing.
Yes. So I was when I was talking about that upside down head thing, or you were, Jeff, we were talking similar to the Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain book by Betty Edwards. I think you can watch the whole thing on YouTube as well. I'm pretty sure there is a just search Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain and you'll find the thing. So, what program is that? It's Photoshop CS6, which Viper Kid answered. Thank you, Viper Kid. Next year I will be a junior in high school, and I'm wondering what I should focus on before art school. Still life, own style, should I start some digital art? I don't know. I would try things. Yeah, I would try all those things. Try still lifes, try digital art. Alright, well, do you have any questions though? Other than if the video is working, because, I don't know. Well, I want to do this to answer your questions if I can. Not just, randomly just...
Wax philosophical?
I mean, if people like that, that's fine, but I don't know. How long did it take you to draw decent human figures? A long time. A long time. I don't know. It's a thing where you constantly improve, so you're not sure when it gets decent. Like, I still don't feel particularly decent. I think there's so much for me to learn. Yeah, those kinds of questions. I think the thing is you're thinking of this as there's a destination, and there really isn't. You just keep improving. Do you like Ian McCaig art? Absolutely. I love Ian McCaig's art. How do you get paid as a freelance artist? Usually through either bank transfer or checks or PayPal.
Lazarus. This may seem like a silly question, but how do I know when to shift to try new art styles? I want to try them all. Problem being that I'll start on one, lose interest in a couple of days, then switch.
That's okay. I mean, it depends where you are in your journey. If this is the beginning, don't worry about that. Yeah, try it all out. See what you like. It's going to take a long time. It actually takes a really long time to figure out what you like, because in the beginning you don't know what you like. So you might think, for instance, I had no idea I liked caricatures. Nothing clicked in my head that I would like caricatures. And then when I tried it, it's like, oh my god, I love this. It's awesome. So you got to try it before you can tell. Now, at the same time, there's another side, and this sort of brought up this discussion on my last video where someone asked, they just wanted to do animals and landscapes, and I suggested that, yeah, just do that. Just do animals or landscapes if you want, if that's all you want to do. And the thing is, I got a couple of people, more than a couple, I think, who thought that was bad advice. I should be saying, no, you need to do figures and you need to do stuff like that. And it's a case of, I don't know, what job are you going for? You know, not every job is the same. Certainly for a lot of jobs, you need to understand the human figure, but not everything. And something that I'm finding out recently is the stuff I like to do, often it's the stuff I always like to do. And even with caricature, I look back and I was doing caricatures. I just didn't know they were caricatures, but I would do funny pictures of people all the time. And so it's that I always, it's like I went full circle. So I started doing what I like, which is sort of like an anime style, and I admired certain artists, and then I went into realism, and I fell in love with Buguro and Sargent and artists like that, and I went into fine art, and then I went into caricature, which I loved, and I would also do some caricature here, and then I did what did I do then? Animation, and then I went to try concept art and illustration. Oh wait, there's no cross there, whatever. And then I ended up going back into anime. It's like, I really enjoy this stuff the most, the stuff that I always knew I liked. So the thing is, if you know you enjoy one thing, and just that one thing, why not? Why not just get good at doing that thing? What's the next question?
Linka711. I am going into animation. What would you suggest me to learn before I get into it? I already am advanced in drawing and I have experience in 3D modeling.
What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I am going into animation. What would you suggest me to? I'm ready. You should try learning gesture, live drawing, and everything, because that's a really big component. With animation, you need to learn how to bring life into something. So, in a lot of ways, you gotta exaggerate a pose sometimes. And if you take a look at just drawings by animators, it's like, even though it's just them in a pose or something, it feels like they're in motion or they're ready to go into motion.
Right.
And try looking at animation books. I'm not sure if I remember any specifically, but they're always talking about the line of action, like the main line of motion that the entire body is going into.
Right.
So if a person is punching, the main line of action is going to be from their feet to where the energy is going to be coming from the ground to the fist, and that's like one line of action, and that's going to be like a curve. Usually, it's a curved line, and if you can get stuff like that, that would just help bring life into your drawings and into your eventual animations.
I agree. That's good advice.
Okay, Reikelf. Should I drop graphic design school for art school?
I don't know. That's something you will have to ask yourself. Why do you enjoy graphic design? Why are you in graphic design? Why would you want to go to art school? I can't help you with those kinds of questions really, because what do you want? You got to think about what you want in life.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Ghost 59 Abel. Hi, I was wondering if I need to go to school for animal and landscapes as well as animation.
I don't know if there's any animal and landscape school. I'm not sure. Maybe someone in the chat, if you know if there's any animals or landscape schools, maybe could help the ghost person. But I honestly, I don't know. Most schools are geared towards a certain trade. So, for instance, animation. But in animation, you don't really focus on... And I guess this is what those guys were talking about, how, if you want to get into a certain field, a career, there isn't really just... You won't be able to just do animals, for instance, and get into animation or get into illustration, because people are going to want different things. However, if you wanted to be a fine artist, that's different. And yes, you could just do animals and whatever all day. All right, next one.
Okay. Hold on a second. Half moon, half monochromy. Chromy. Okay, I'm going for it and ask. I'm from Germany and I'm applying for art school right now, but honestly, our country is pretty conservative with art. Should I stay here and get some experience, though?
Well, the great thing right now is the internet, and I would say it doesn't matter a whole lot where you're from. Yeah, visit a zoo. That's great advice for the animals thing. Or look at National Geographic or something. I don't know. But yeah, there's really no excuse in terms of I live in this certain place, because if you're watching this, obviously you have internet access, and there's so much online. So I don't know in terms of it. I would say here's the thing: school is not really necessary in terms of education just by itself, because education in terms of, the information is online. The information is everywhere online. You don't actually have to go to school for that. What school helps for is, and I think I explained it a bit before, it helps with connections, you network. It helps with motivation for some people. If you're one of these people who cannot be self-taught, simply, not that you can't be self-taught, but you don't enjoy it, it's very difficult for you to be cooped up by yourself and just learning on your own. You need to have people around you. Then yes, school helps for that. It gives you an environment where everyone's learning. It's easier to be motivated. You also get sort of like a pat on the back with teachers. They give you an assignment, and then you get your A or B or whatever, and you get to feel good or bad depending. So you're getting feedback, right? And here online you can get feedback in the form of a forum, in the form of having peers who are also working on the same thing you are. But it's a bit different than when a teacher gives you that. Now, there is one problem, though, that I've seen with schools, and this depends on the school. I'm not saying this is true for every school, but it's true for a lot of schools, and especially students who I've privately taught. I see this issue coming up a lot, and it is concerning people going to school and competing with their fellow students and assuming that they got good grades in school. For instance, they'll do an assignment on perspective, for instance, and they'll get an A, and it's fine. They think, okay, I got an A in perspective. I know my perspective. And what happens, though, is later they graduate, and then they're in the real world, and now they're not competing with their fellow students. They're competing with professionals, and often they find out, oh, crap, I am not even close to the level I need to be. Whereas with people online, they don't have other students. They don't have teachers to tell them, hey, you're doing a good job. So they end up naturally competing with professionals. And that's, yeah, so that's something you want to think about, that even if you're in school, and even if you enjoy school, and it's a good environment for you, be looking outside. Don't just focus on what you're doing in class and the grades you're getting in class and assuming that that is okay. It might be, but it might also be that you are not at the standard you need to be and you don't even know it, because all the information you're getting, all the feedback you're getting is, no, you're doing good, you're passing and all that. All right.
Alrighty then. Okay. Rusty Shackleford. I like drawing... or Shackleford.
No, Shackleford.
Shackleford, okay, that's a good name. I like drawing people, but I can never get the faces right. They seem to lack depth. How do you begin to draw facial characteristics?
You gotta think of it differently. So, if I draw a face and I start... And this is a way that's often taught, especially with anime, right? They'll start with a big circle, and then you make a cross through it, and then you add this triangle. And then this represents the jawline. Not a pure triangle, but like this sort of shape, right? You've probably seen this before in how to draw books. You place the eyes, you place the nose, you place the mouth, fine. But this is all flat. You have to start thinking in terms of, this isn't a circle that you're drawing the face on. This is a ball or a sphere, right? And this is the cranium of the skull. So now even, and get away from just drawing pure front views. Don't do that for a little bit. Maybe it's okay, but do side views, do 3/4 views, and think of this line that goes through the middle, the center line, like that. Think of that as coming around and then going down. So this is now a 3-dimensional object. And then if you have a line here going across, it comes like that and it goes around. I made a video on Pencil Kings that talks about this, and basically I'm just using what I learned from Loomis. So you could also just pick up an Andrew Loomis book, and that'll help you as well. The thing that I found, and the reason I think those type of things are effective, the Pencil Kings and all that, is because you get to see someone draw. And I feel, for myself anyway, that I learn more when I'm seeing someone draw than if I just, open up a book and I see finished drawings and I can't see how they got from point A to point B. I want to see the process.
Okay then. Vinvo. When I digitally paint, my colors seem to be ugly or muddy. How do I pick good colors?
So the muddy thing is a case of losing saturation off. Okay, maybe you're doing this. Maybe you're painting, and I'm not saying you are because I don't know your situation. I would need to see more detail, but let's say this is one of the problems. And you blend colors by like color picking the middle colors and picking those. If this is something you're doing where, let's say I want to blend these 3 colors, and I pick a bit of the green and I put it into the yellow, and then I take the mixture and I start painting that around. Pick a bit of the yellow and put it into the blue, and I'm creating mixtures like this. You can get muddy this way, and one way to counter this is by constantly adjusting your saturation. So every time you mix 2 colors in Photoshop, let's say I have this color, and this has a certain purity and saturation, and this has its own saturation. Now every time I mix in between those, I'm losing saturation here. You can see it on this triangle thing, on the...
Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing technical difficulties.
No! There, this one works. So I was going to say with this, you just bump up the saturation when you have mixtures. So now we're in CS3 because apparently CS6 is being stubborn.
Next is Geo Berserker. I have full confidence in traditional art, but I don't know where to begin with digital art, like which brushes at which opacity are good for lines, painting, etc. Does pixel size of the page matter?
Absolutely. Pixel size matters because if you use any sort of textured brush, and textured brushes mimic. So, for instance, right now I'm using this spatter brush at size 10 and flow 27, and it looks sort of pencil-like. And I've been asked about this brush, and I've talked about it a bunch of times. And I guess because I don't really use CS3 anymore, but that's what I have default. So that one works well. But it's not going to work well if your image size is too small. So let's see this image size. This image size is, it's not that big, 2550 by 3300. On a slower PC, that would be a problem, and especially in the past, it was always a case of needing more RAM. But now, most computers can handle Photoshop okay, especially the older versions of Photoshop. They should run very smooth and fast. But yeah, image size does matter. You want to be around, 2500 plus for pixels, and then your brushes will behave normally. Whereas, let me just do it as an example. If I made an image that's web 640 by 480, and same brush, right? So here, brush looks good, looks nice. That's a nice looking brush. It's real smooth. And then I go here. Now look, oh, that's not so great looking. That looks like, oh, not good. So let's shrink our brush. So now I'm shrinking it to like 2 pixels, and no, it doesn't look good. 3, 4 pixels. No, it still doesn't look good. It looks blurry. I don't know how well the quality of that, how well that shows in your thing, but when I zoom in, you can see. I hope that this brush just, it loses something, whereas this one, it's much nicer when I'm zoomed in. And this I'm zoomed in at 300, and this I'm not even at 100%, so this is 100%. And then when you zoom out, and then after, of course, you would shrink your image when you're uploading it. So you could go to percent and change it to 25%, and then that looks a lot nicer. You get those nice lines. So a lot of it does have to do with the image size. Okay, next question.
Okay, let me find it. Yep. Strange Kobold. Hi, Sycra. Do you have any recommendations on other websites to post art to? Currently, I just have my art on DeviantArt.
Concept art. There's a lot of people are doing the Tumblr thing now, and I don't know. I think Tumblr. I'm not keeping up with a lot of the new social media things. But Facebook seems to also be good. So, yeah.
Okay. Daft Tur. How do you think we can be professional artists without being taught?
Yeah, you can. There are people. You just have to be very motivated, and you have to be extremely dedicated, hardworking, but you can definitely do it. You need to have a sense of curiosity and analysis within yourself. You need that fire from yourself, and you need to be willing to put in, at least a couple of years to develop as an artist. It depends where you start, but usually, maybe 2 to 4 years of really hard work to get to that level, from what I've seen. It didn't take me that long. It took me much longer than that, but that's because I never knew what serious was. I didn't understand what I was competing with only myself and not understanding what other people were doing, how many hours they were putting in. And once I found out, then I really could adjust and, start doing what other people were doing and putting in the hours necessary.
Right. All right. Tenibor. I'm graduating art college next week with a BFA in digital art. Please, for the love of whatever deity you believe in, give me all the advice.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Get a good portfolio. Your BFA, I'm sorry to say, in terms of what I've seen, it doesn't matter. It's just there. It's like a piece of paper, so you might want to wipe your ass with your BFA and then make sure you got a good portfolio going. And
yeah, it's
look at portfolios online. professionals' portfolio, or even other students, people who are graduates from a certain school, look at their portfolios and see, okay, do I compare? Yeah.
Right. Okay. Undead Electric. At what age do you think you really started getting good?
I never got good, really, but it's not about age. It's about when I took Jason Seiler's course. I studied with this teacher, Zhongru Huang, and those helped me a lot because I was learning about something. The thing is right now, everything I learned that really helped me, or most of the things, I've made YouTube videos on them. So I would, that's what I always think of when I make my YouTube videos is, what would I have told myself when I was starting out? So it's all here. And there's other artists, of course, that can help you as well. Behance is a good website. Okay. Anyway, but yeah.
Next.
Yeah, next.
Okay. Azil99. I'm trying painting on Photoshop, but I've always been a line person and paint buckets for color. Do you have any tips on starting up painting? Do I require a tablet to do it well?
Not if you want to do cell shading, you don't need a tablet. But if you want to do painting, yeah. Try using the hard round brush and see if you can make friends with it. So hard round brush is just this first brush in Photoshop. And wow, the settings are crazy on this, but this is good. See? So let's say you just open up Photoshop and you take out your tablet, and this is what's happening for you. What you want to do is open up your brushes window. See, this is the thing. I never use this, so everything's not set up properly. And I want to change the spacing to about 7 is good. I like the number 7 in case you don't know. 2 is good as well, like 1. Anything low is good. The lower the spacing, the more smooth this is going to be. I'm getting some lag though, so I'm going to increase the spacing just a bit. Okay, and now that should work. Other dynamics is fine. All right. Next question.
Okay.
Wait, did I finish that one?
I finished which one?
I don't know. Did I finish the last? Did I answer the last one?
I think you did. You recommended using the hard round, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to do painting and try, open up some reference and try and copy it. I don't know.
Okay then. Coarse Flame. I have a horrible time capturing distinguishing features in the face. All of the people in my portraits always look related in some way when they shouldn't. Any advice for that?
Maybe you're sticking to a style instead of trying to just draw faces. Because everybody is unique. So if you're always drawing the eyes the same way, that could lead to things looking the same. So if you've thought of eyes like a symbol, and so for instance this is an eye, then yeah, you're gonna draw everybody with similar features. You might have a nose that you always draw. Oh no. So what you want to do is actually look at eyes carefully and maybe open up some reference, and you'll notice that people have very different eyes. Things just aren't the same. Pay attention to that. Look at all the details. Do studies again. As I guess today we've been talking quite a bit about studies, and I would recommend that.
Okay. Next.
Yeah.
Okay. Geo Berserker. As a follow-up question to my first in regard to pixel size of the page, I asked because things seem to come out sloppy. I wonder if making the image larger makes things look cleaner as you zoom out.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. I Super Stefan. What graphics tablet do you use?
I'm using a Cintiq 22 HD. I started on a Wacom Graphire. I think I might have misspoke and said Bamboo, but no, Bamboos weren't even around at that time. Started on a 6x4 Graphire, and then I moved to a 12 by 9 Intuos 3. Then I upgraded to an Intuos 4, and then I downgraded back to the Intuos 3, and then I went back to the Intuos 4, and then I went back. Then I went to the Cintiq 22 HD, and it's all fine. I think right now this is the same level as Bamboo, so it was a good starting tablet, and then once you get better, you can upgrade.
Okay then. Frequency Flow TV. Can I learn everything I need to know about graphic design via online tutorials, or is it mandatory to go to some type of school?
Absolutely, you can learn everything online. Absolutely. Especially for graphic design, there's so much, so many tutorials out there. Yeah. I think Control Paint, he has good ones, and I know there's like Tutvid or something like that. There's so many good ones, so definitely, no excuses.
Wow, you cut out for a long time on my end.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Anyways, next question?
Yeah.
Okay. Reikelf. I were going to art school to work as an artist, but I just didn't feel safe with it, since here in Brazil, from my perspective, it is much harder to work with art. Graphic design, no, okay, that's not a question. Samuel Kirby. Sycra, I'm learning how to do anatomy and figure drawing, but I was wondering which book I should get, Anatomy for the Artist or Figure Drawing for All It's Worth?
Anatomy for the Artist or Figure Drawing for All It's Worth? Figure Drawing for All It's Worth, definitely. If it's a choice between Sarah Simblett or Andrew Loomis, all the way.
Okay. Is Photoshop a standard for digital artists?
Yes. Definitely, it is.
Start learning it now.
Yeah, you need to know Photoshop.
Okay, Pubble Wubble. The hardest thing... You got a great name, Pubble Wubble.
Pubble Wubble.
Yeah, it's a good name.
Yeah.
The hardest thing for me to get is how to draw hips and legs for some reason. Do you have any tips?
I've been doing a few proportion ones, and they include things about hips. One of the things I've been doing lately is simplifying the body into one body shape, and then the legs into that. That seems to work. Understand how the hips go. So for what I mean by that is, there's like, it comes out, and then you have like a pelvis here, right? And this is a terrible pelvis because I'm just, whatever. This is just the shape for where the pelvis is. So you have your pelvis, and then you have a bone here, and it comes out. What's this bone called? This is like the greater trochanter, I think, and this is the femur. And then, yeah. So you have this thing coming out, and you have this bony part of the pelvis. So you have to understand that, and this comes inward at an angle. So if this is straight up and down, that's going inward. And so when you have the skin on top, it's going to go over these two bony parts, and it's going to create a certain shape. And then you have this sartorius coming down from the pelvis, and it goes around. This is all in art books as well. Maybe I'll make a more detailed tutorial on that. But yeah, it's going to be too long to explain in just this video. So pay attention to the bones and how those work in the muscles and all that.
All right. Where was I? It's not a question. Anatomy for its worth. Oh yeah, Pubble Wubble. That's where I was. All right. I'm going to say this wrong. Le Riccio Avellino. Let's say I want to start up a digital painting school with concept art and industrial design following some styles. Robertson, Fangzhou, and Sycra. What would be the classes and structure of the program?
I don't know. See, the thing is, who am I compared to Fangzhou and Scott Robertson? I don't know stuff, so I don't know. Whatever they said the curriculum is, I'd probably be like, okay.
Okay, moving on. Baconful. Are there any? No, wait. Was it? Okay, yeah, Baconful. Are there any rules about art that you can tell us about, like copyright, references, inspiration, the concept, etc.?
Yeah, copyright is there's that. So don't if you're gonna copy and artists do this, they'll look at, I don't know why I still have this open. They'll look at another artist and they'll copy it, and that's fine for learning if you want to do that. I never did, but I should have, because I see now that, geez, people who do that seem to have really good results. So they'll see, here's the artist's work, and yeah, you copy it. But here's the thing, don't put this on your portfolio ever. This is a study. This is its own thing. You don't want to say this is my work and then put this out. This is just a study. So you can post it maybe in like a concept art sketchbook or something, but otherwise you don't want to be doing that. Don't copy other artists' work and call it your own, basically.
J and B Bros. Is it easier to use a grid when you're drawing?
Yeah, it's easier, but it's not necessarily better. It's only good for learning how to see angles, or if you don't really care about the drawing underneath. But it is easier. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how I'm not sure about that one.
Dandy Danonino. Sycra, does one develop their own style by imitating other artists, or would you say that a person has, let's say, a natural style of their own?
Both. I did it just by developing my natural style, and then what I realized is that people who do imitate, they basically you are you, right? And the more you are yourself and believe in yourself, the more your style will come out if you allow it to. So you almost have no choice. Even if you become an imitation of someone, eventually people aren't going to hire you for that. They're gonna say like, well, but that's just the same as this other guy who's doing the same thing you're doing but better. So you'll never be able to beat someone else, but you can use it as a starting point and learn what they have to teach by looking at how they approach things, how they do things, and move on from there. So both ways work. If you just naturally let your style develop, it will, and I encourage that. And also if you imitate other people to learn certain things, and I wouldn't have said this before, but I totally think so now, do that. It definitely works. You get results because you're learning how they approach things. Do as many things as you can, really.
Okay. Tiffany Myers, do you have any book recommendations for learning to draw urban backgrounds in perspective?
Today I went to an art store and I saw there was a book called How to Draw Urban Landscapes or something in perspective. So yeah, I don't know. I just saw that book. I'm like, huh? Okay, I guess there is such a book out there. Look it up. It was a yellow book. I don't know if that's going to help you.
All right. Viper Kid 108. What do you think of TV Paint?
I've seen MoteDD tutorials use it, and that's the only guy I know who's using it. I don't know anything about it. It looks cool. He's rigged it a certain way. One of my drawings. So, yeah. I don't know. It looks good from what he does.
Okay, Geo Berserker. When creating a digital painting, what kind of brush is best to use and at what opacity should it be at? And other tips on setting basics that you can recommend?
Uh, I don't know. Just play around with different brushes. Start with the hard round. Um, I used for a long time. I used the 24 pixel spatter brush, and it was set to opacity jitter and flow jitter. It's not. So it's a default Photoshop brush, and I would do that on a large canvas. And it seems to be a good all-around brush because it's got a bit of texture to it. So for people who are more traditionally minded in the way they paint, it sort of works nice for them as a transition. Hard round really should be where you start though, because in the end you can do everything with the hard round. Everything, like the brushes just make things faster.
Okay. Sonic Blast 2404. Since I got jumped over last time, sad face. When I draw robots, it just looks like armor. I want to make the shapes more 3D. How do I do that?
Understand basic forms. So you want to look at the forms and see cylinders and stuff. And this you probably see it in art books before, where they break things down, but it really does work. And an important thing about all this stuff with, breaking simple forms down that I don't always see is don't just use the cylinder, but also create a center line for all this stuff. And that will help you understand, what direction are things pointing.
Okay.
It takes a while though, so don't expect it to happen quick.
The Pixie Powder Puff. Are you going to do more critiques?
Maybe. I don't get too much time. I used to have one day where I would do YouTube videos, one day in the week, and that was about as much time as I had. And it usually did take about a day. With the streams, because it's live, it's actually faster than if I was to do a real video, because with a real video what I do is I plan it out and I put down my notes. With critique videos I have to render them multiple times, and with this video I'm gonna have to render it once I put it into Camtasia and then put it online again, so it will be the high quality version. It will be rendered twice or whatever, but still so streaming is actually making things a bit faster, but I do plan on doing critiques. I just don't have that much time.
Okay. J&B Bros. How can you come up with your own unique style?
Just draw a lot and it'll happen. You'll see things you like and things you don't, and then the more foundation you have, the more that will come up. So for instance, like I have my own way of drawing eyes or something, but that's, I don't know, I don't really want to show it because it feels weird to show how I do things, but yeah, once you're drawing your foundations, you'll find things that seem more you, things that you either like to do or you might see it in other artists, where you look at an artist and like, oh, I love the way they do eyes, and then maybe copy that and then put your own, like, what do you like about that? Because the reason you're attracted to another artist often is because there's a part of their work that would be you but isn't yet.
Another way to look at style is that it's a way to interpret reality. And when you look at the style of other artists, you take a look at how they interpret clothing, material, or even a line. And then, like for example, some people might interpret a jacket or a coat in a more sharper way. And it's like there's more sharp edges, and then those edges might represent wrinkles or maybe just a texture or something. But you can see that it's just the way they see reality. And then there's many different interpretations, and what you'll eventually find is that you'll start developing your own way. It might begin subconsciously, where it might just be like you might round out things more than what they actually are, or make things sharper, or whatever it is. You'll start noticing, and then you'll gravitate towards things that you like yourself in terms of style, and then you might incorporate a bit of it, but you'll make it your own.
Yeah.
Okay. Nani, I'm going to say this wrong. Nani on Ina. I find it 100 times easier to control my hand when drawing traditionally, but when I try to use my tablet, my hand and brain go blah 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 blah. How can I improve when using my tablet?
Just practice more. Because that's true for everybody. I mean, we all, there's it's gonna be hard at first.
Okay. Razil99. I have seen many artists paint in grayscale, then add color after. Is that a useful habit to get into?
Yep.
And why?
Yeah, it's useful. It's not necessary, but it's useful because then you're just dealing with value, so it's making your life easier. So, I talked about art being like juggling, where you have all these balls in the air. And, I'm always hesitant to say balls because I'm afraid of immature comments. But anyway, so let's say there's like a few balls, and it's RGB colors. And one of these is perspective, and one of these is values, and one of these is color, and anatomy, and anatomy, and composition. Let's just say that. That's all your balls right now. There's many more. But it's easier to juggle if you have less balls. So if you get rid of the color one and you're just focusing on these, and then you bring in color later through, color layers or color balance or other ways of bringing in the color, then it's just easier. It's less to deal with all at once.
Okay. Okay, Metal Jaguar. What image size resolution do you recommend for drawing?
I already went over that, so please look at the old question. It's answered already.
Oh.
I don't know why you asked the same question twice. I already answered your question. Please go on to the next question.
Don't look at me, it's the chat. Okay, Strange Cobalt. How did you set up that square textured brush you were using a while ago in CS6? It looks really nice.
That's an Anthony Jones brush. You can get it off Schoolism, I think, has it on their interviews thing. And there's one interview at schoolism.com that has, or a couple that have Anthony Jones, and he has a chalk brush texture. So that's where you get it.
Okay. S-Jarv, have you tried butt chugging? Would you recommend it to aspiring artists?
I tried it once or twice. I wouldn't recommend it because I felt very dizzy after doing it. So I don't think it helps for artists.
And it did a number to my bowels. ViperKid108. I have a Cintiq 12WX, and when I draw, my hand gets in the way. Is there a way to fix that?
You cut off your hand. No, I don't know. No, I have that problem too. So I think that's a downside of a Cintiq, and that's why a lot of people actually prefer tablets. Though some people even go back to tablets. I know Feng Zhu primarily he uses tablets. So yeah.
Okay. Doesn't seem like there's any more questions coming in. Should be a way to get more effective. What is your name? I'd like to credit you for that quote. My name is Jeff, or Zenfuli.
Oh yeah, people were asking if they could see your work last time.
So. It's nothing impressive, but and I haven't really put anything recent up on there, even though I should.
Where are all the questions? I'll read them now. Should be a way to move the affected area on a Cintiq by 1 centimeter in any direction. Would fix that problem. Not sure if it's possible to calibrate it in any way. Sycra loves juggling balls. I have a Cintiq Oh, you really have answered all questions. When you paint in grayscale, what blending mode layer do you use Photoshop? Is the color layer or overlay? I use overlay a lot. I use color first maybe, but overlay is good, you know? But actually right now, I get used to use color balance. Adjustment layer, color balance. You find it with the adjustment layer thing, you click it, you find the color balance layer. I enjoy drawing cute stuff, which might look a little anime-ish, but it kind of makes me feel bad to draw it. Does it mean I shouldn't? I feel like I should stay away from anime. You know, I had that feeling too. Every time I go to anime, I would feel guilty, like, I shouldn't be doing this. But then, you know, I'd do it anyway, and I'd slap myself and, oh, terrible, you're so bad for doing anime. But you know what I learned after a while is that you just gotta be yourself, and if you like doing anime, you do anime. Don't be ashamed. There's nothing to be ashamed about. If you like it, do it.
Just accept yourself. I'm sorry. Oh, by the way, it won't let me paste the link to my DeviantArt.
Oh right, yeah. You have to put. I'll just open it in the thing. Yeah. What are you? Are you Zhen Fuli or Bob Meatbag?
Zhen Fuli.
Yeah. Here's his work. The guy. Here's his stuff. It's pretty cool. I like it anyway. I think it's really cool. He helped me a lot with. I know it's old, but that's why you should draw more, I guess. Or I don't know. Well, I know it's no time, but anyway, it's good stuff. It's good. You should draw more. Nah. Okay. What's going on here? No, why do I have a color balance layer? Oh, I'm so disorganized. This is getting really weird. OMFGOK. Have you even considered voice acting?
Lol at the voices.
Oh, it must be when I was doing the anime thing. Anyway, sorry, there's a delay. Do pen nubs affect the drawing on tablets? Nibs, I think. Yes. Yeah, a little bit, but I only use the same nib, so I don't know.
Oh, there's another question.
Oh.
Not much. And it's a bit older. Matthias, I'm going to say this wrong again. Taizira. You are so cool. How did you learn to draw? What was the first thing you drew? What inspired you?
First thing I drew was a portrait of my dad, and I was, I think, 2 or 3, and I thought it was really good, and I don't have it. But yeah, and then I just kept. I thought, okay, I'm pretty good at this, so I kept doing it. I think that's common, right? People often, you know, they think they have some kind of talent.
Miss. Oh, right. Just 1 second. Let me get that question and paste. Random question. What is your favorite color, or one you tend to use a lot?
Well, now I use all the colors, so I don't have. I have a favorite, as in what I used to have as a favorite. But honestly, after a while, color stops being so important in terms of a color. It's more color combination. So for instance, there's a lot of people who really enjoy the purple with orange color, or you know, it's color combinations. Reds with teals are pretty nice, or magentas with teals are nice. There's a lot there.
Okay. Geo Berserker, can you show us your professional portfolio?
It's on my website. It's not very good, but it's not. I don't update it much because a lot of stuff is. A lot of stuff that artists do is NDA, meaning it's a non-disclosure agreement, and you cannot show your work until a certain amount of time. So often you see artists, if they don't post personal work, like I don't really because I'm bad. But if they don't do that, they can actually show you the current work that they're working on.
Right. Okay. Stefan DeAndre. What? What?
I don't know. Stefan Dion? No, it's anyway. Okay.
Deandrade or
Whatever.
anyways. I spelled it.
Whatever. Just what's the question?
Weird. What artists you recommend for? What artists would you recommend for realistic anime styles in the style you are drawing currently in the stream? By the way, your impressions are priceless. Lol.
Realistic anime styles. Maybe Koreans. They do this a lot. I don't know about the style I was doing. I don't know. That's not even my style. I was just like screwing around because it's hard to talk into paint. So, but yeah, realist. Oh, maybe Dean Holdeen. Right. So he's this guy. He draws like these kind of things. It's sort of anime, sort of realistically painted anime-ish stuff. Yeah, I really like his work anyway. There's many artists that do this, but I'll write his name all big and stuff in Photoshop. Real big. Gonna make it real big for you. Dean. His name, first name Dean. Okay, you got it? Okay. Dean. D-E-A-N. Hole. Again, Dean. So first, Dean, and then a hole, and then Dean. Alright?
Sonic Blast 2404. Better way to show work style-wise, realistic or anime-ish, and how long should a person draw daily? I mean, like 1 or 2 hours?
At least. That's like probably more than that. I would think. Maybe start at 1 or 2 and then try and bump it up. Yeah, this is cool. And what was the first part of that?
Better way to show work style-wise. I don't know why I'm messing that word up. Anyways, realistic or anime-ish?
Realistic is definitely gonna be better because you can include anime and keep it as your style. There's two types of artists really. There's the jack of all trades sort of ish. I wouldn't say jack of all trades really, but what you do is you've got your foundations solid, and you can do realistic stuff. And in this Western market anyway, where I live, that's what's necessary sort of. Or you can be a superstar artist with their own style, and then you have to be really good, and then you have your own style and people will forgive you if you're good enough. But there's not that many. So for instance, you look at Kekai Kotaki, and you look at his stuff and it's like, yeah, he's got his own style. Or a Dave Raposa, and they can do anything. They're allowed to have their style. But what you'll notice, and what I found when I first started getting jobs is the people will show you a specific style and say, make it look like this. And most often, the style is very realistic. And even if it's anime, the painting style is quite realistic. So it's somewhat limiting. Again, you have to be super good. Not only do you have to be super good, you have to be popular so that people can look at your style and see that, yes, this style sells.
Right. Yeah. That's just the way it usually is. Let's see. What's next? Beijinful. Why do you think it's so hard for artists to be well known nowadays, such as increased awareness for art?
Yeah, Augenfleger is good, Hannes. Sorry. What? Why does it what? Sorry.
Oh, okay. Why do you think it's so hard for artists to be well known
Right,
nowadays?
because of the competition. There's so much competition. It's crazy. This is the bad side of yeah, it's just there's so many artists out there. So it's really difficult. This is one of the bad things about being an artist. And honestly, the art right now, it's much better in many ways. Like the average level of art is higher than it was before. So whereas before I might have been able to easily get work, now it's like there's tons of people equal or better. So, yeah.
All right. Is Art Institute a ripoff?
Yeah.
What should?
From what I've heard, yes. My brother went there and it was garbage. They just
Right.
steal your money.
And what should a portfolio have?
It depends where you're applying. Often a good idea is to, if you have in mind that you want to work for a certain studio, look at the studio's work and try and make work that is your own. It's original, but it looks like it can fit with that studio. So right now there's a generic realistic style that's going around, and let's see. I did like one of my recent pictures. I'm not happy with it anymore, but it was this lizard barbarian guy, and it's in this sort of like realistic-ish style. It's pushed, but not too much. The rendering is sort of realistic. There's sort of like this trend going around with these kind of arts styles. So that's a safe one. But you got to know a lot. You got to understand your values, your colors. It takes a lot of work, and joining things like Crimson Daggers will help you to get there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think I missed this one. Kira09KJ. I have trouble putting longer hair on the head in 3 of 4 view. Would you have any tips?
Why do you have trouble? It's so start off with the skull. Always go back to the skull, right? The basics. So you have your skull, and oh jeez, this is a terrible skull. Anyway, let's assume this was a nicely drawn skull, and then you have your hair, and your hair just goes. Okay, so where's the hairline? Let's say here's the hairline, here's the ear. Okay. So now, whether it's long or short, it's going to follow on top. So let's say, like, feel it. Think, okay, the hair's going to come around. Maybe it's tucked behind the ear. Comes back here. Usually there's a part down the middle of the hair, and the hair sort of flows out of one spot. So you want to find the spot that it's flowing from. And so this, by the way, is the neck, and all this is the hair. But see, it sort of flows on top. So once you have the skull there, it shouldn't be that difficult. Maybe it's difficult if you are drawing with no skull and you get sort of like a face, and you're used to like formula drawing where you just learn certain shapes. And then, yeah, understanding how do I do long hair and how does that work? Maybe that's hard. I also think curly hair is a different thing. That can be difficult. And for that, I don't know, you got to learn certain shapes, like the way things flow around. One thing I liked doing was I created these, I would draw triangles that would go, okay, how would I do this? I'd start with like a line, and then, yeah, and then I draw a triangle, like as if this was a snake. And I would practice drawing those triangle shapes, getting bigger and imagining the body of the snake. So I started with like the spine line. Sorry, I'm not making this clear because I'm like thinking and drawing at the same time, and as I said, I'm not very good at that yet. So anyway, yeah, so I start with the spine line, and then I make these triangles, right? And then you connect these bottom things, the bottom parts of the triangle, you connect the other ones, and then you have like a three-dimensional shape, and it sort of helps your brain to understand where things are. So like the ground is in green, and I'm gonna just put Like all the part of the snake that's touching the ground, I'm making that green. If this snake was see-through.
Okay. Phantom A-Force. I'll be attending art school next year. Any general tips for school?
Really push yourself. Don't expect the school to teach you. As stupid as that sounds, because it's like, well, but that's why I'm paying for school. School is only as effective as you make it. Now, it's really good for, as I mentioned before, it can be good for networking. It can be good for having motivation to work. But put it on yourself to succeed. Don't expect the school to teach you anything. Really, really, really don't expect anything from it. Because if you do, you will blame the school for it not being very good, instead of maybe you should just work harder and use the resources they have.
And be aware of the opportunity you have. Because think about it. You don't have to go get a job and learn at the same time. You're in an environment where you can just straight up study. That's what you're there to do. And you're very lucky to be in that kind of environment, so use it well. And if you can, surround yourself with people who are competitive, who want to get better, because that will make all the difference.
That's really good advice. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Master of Evil Shadow. What would be a good practice regiment? I've been drawing for a while, but my progress is pathetic. Can you recommend a good way to practice daily?
Dave Raposa put up a schedule a while back of what he does, and I think it's something that people could learn from, because it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So he made the schedule, and so if you just search on Google for Dave Raposa schedule, you'll see this, and he wasn't doing school at this time, so you might not be able to match it. But let's say you followed a similar schedule for a year, you'd be pretty good when you finished.
I think that's all the questions.
All right.
So far.
All right. Well, maybe we can end it then. It's getting kind of late.
Right.
I got to get back to work. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for asking questions. Do you want to say anything, Jeff? Thank you again for taking questions.
Oh, no problem. No, I think that's good. Thanks for all the questions and for putting up with all the technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. I think that'll be all. Good night and good luck.